Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome to the highlights from this week of Light Season offense matches. This week was an excellent opportunity to switch things up a bit. Having a Wind Season line up with the recently remixed Corrin was a perfect excuse to see her updated kit in action. Corrin's remix really helped polish her into an effective tank. Getting post-combat healing along with both flat and percentage damage reduction from her weapon makes her extremely durable, while her blade and null guard effects let her effortlessly recharge negating Fang. Her specials update turned it into a powerful defensive tool. Getting an instant reset against any multi-hit opponents makes it much harder to break through her defenses, and the bonus damage makes her counterattacks difficult to survive. As a fun perk, the extra damage also stacks against multi-hit opponents, giving her an appropriately proportionate response. The rest of her kit is full of modern skills that I've been waiting for her remix to commit to. Finish is a great complement to her playstyle and will be active for her counterattacks even if her special gets disrupted by a tempo effect. Magical Null Follow-Up is a particularly important part of her kit. Her weapon and special give her plenty of durability, so picking up Pierce lets her handle the glass cannon nukes that rely on damage reduction to survive their fights, along with making it much less likely for her opponent to land a follow-up attack. Panic Smoke rounds things out nicely. While she won't always get it online for her first combat, that's also the combat that she's guaranteed to have Negating Fang online for, and the penalty doubler really helps to smooth out any disruptions to looping it afterwards. The rest of the team is here as her backup. Gatekeeper, as usual, is an excellent support for an enemy phase strategy. His ability to donate stats and post-combat healing from across the map bring Corrin up to a pretty consistent 21 healing per combat, while also denying warp effects from sneaking past her and even softening up the enemy team with Ploy to give her easier access to one-shots. Verena is doing her best as the bonus unit again this week. A pair of opening skills do a decent job of giving Corrin cross-map stat support, and Smite is a useful mobility tool. Milla is always helpful to have on the team, offering isolation to defuse important assists, along with more cross-map stats and a handy dull attack effect. She and Dash also complete the debuff spectrum with a pair of sabotages, letting Corrin take full advantage of Penalty Doubler. Ash and Peony form the core of the team's mobility. Having multiple guidance effects makes it much easier to navigate through any map, and Peony's ability to donate dodge, null penalties, and even more cross-map stats to Corrin turns her into an appropriately draconic raid boss. So let's get to the first match. This match was a neat one to puzzle out. While it isn't as threatening as a full cavalry line at first glance, having two Pathfinders and Sigurd on the team gives the entire squad a lot more reach than you might expect at first. Sonya is another unit who can catch people off guard. While she doesn't have a way to bring her special online until the second turn, the combination of Beyond Witchery and Escape Route lets her warp up to 4 spaces at a time to attack from an angle you weren't expecting her to reach. Sigurd was a bit of a sticky point for planning this out. The extra movement he gives his allies can make it difficult to keep our support squad out of range, especially with a Dancer and 2 Pathfinders behind it. On the other hand, Triandra's position next to the 7th slot Embla means that she should dance before Sigurd even attacks, making the bottom left corner a safe area to hide our backline in, while Corrin blocks off Kvasir. It's a good plan in theory, unless of course Triandra does exactly 5 visible damage to Corrin, and doesn't dance right away. Sigurd moves in first, since he does have a safe attack, and while this doesn't do too much damage to Corrin and won't get anything to stick, it does bring Negating Fang offline for the next combat. And the penalty doubler means that Triandra can no longer do 5 damage to Corrin, but thankfully she does dance Embla anyway, instead of going after Sigurd. And that just means Corrin gets to start proceeding down the rest of the chain of attack. Kvasir goes first, and doesn't really get to accomplish very much, even without Negating Fang online, and it's all downhill from here. Even if Embla gets to neutralize penalties, she's not really going to compete with Corrin. And Null Guard means that Corrin doesn't have any problems recharging Negating Fang for every combat. Note goes in here just because she has less health to lose than anybody else. And then we just deal with Sonia. And finish the turn with Dogger. Things are a lot more straightforward from here. While we don't want to close out the match right away, it's not hard for us to have Corrin pick off Sigurd and take the most threatening part of this team off the field. From there, having repositioned Peony forwards, we can dance Corrin with an aerobatics, Kanto up, and then use guidance to get Corrin all the way forward and lock Triandra in place. Which keeps the entire map safe for us to break our way forward and pick up the Aether Pots next turn. Gatekeeper can get our first one, Peony can grab the second, and we can have Corrin close out the match. This match was a bit of an intimidating one to see, featuring the first Harmonic Igreen I've run into. Igreen's a dangerous threat even on her own. Her pre-charged AoE special gets extra scaling from both her visible attack and speed stats, making it easy for her to demolish an opponent's health before the combat even starts. The extra movement and terrain immunity can enable some sneaky picks through the forest tile too, especially when combined with Medius' Harsh Command. The hardy-bearing Sanaki's an excellent way to clean up whatever's left of a tank that survives Igreen, and the two save armors make this difficult to attack into in the player phase. The out-of-season Freyr was a bit of a nuisance here. Keeping Igreen safe from sabotages meant that Corrin would have a harder time surviving the blazing wind. After doing some math, I decided to let her tackle this map anyway. We get this started on the first turn. After Corrin breaks the initial structure and gets danced, she can use guidance to jump past the forest and set up on the defense tiles. I am expecting Medius to end up sneaking past her. Another perk of Freyr's that Ninian is isolation-proof, so Gatekeeper pulls Peony to safety and the rest of the team settles in behind him to watch the fireworks. As expected, Medius ends up going for a harsh command on the defense tile and gets danced in to attack Gatekeeper. But Gatekeeper's perfectly fine with this, he doesn't end up taking any damage, and the fact that Medius attacked first means that Corrin should have a pretty decent time of handling the rest of the team. Igreen does do a chunk of damage with that special and takes Corrin below half health, but can't quite follow through in combat, which means that Corrin ends up healing for almost half of the damage the AoE did. Tsunaki goes in next. She can get some chip damage done thanks to the flared mirror, but if she can't do any damage with her actual attacks, that chip damage is never going to be enough to threaten Corrin. And since Freyr's out of range, it's just the Brave Corrin left for this turn, and that isn't a fight that she should really want to take. This turn ended up being a little more awkward than I would have liked.
Which way to go?
I don't want to knock out all of them this turn, since we do still need to pick up these Aether Pots. So I decide to just have Corrin move down and pick off Medius and stop him from menacing anyone who isn't named Gatekeeper,
Ready.
and then dancing Corrin and letting her stay in place. Gatekeeper can move up and pick up our first Aether Pot, and from here we can let Corrin bait out both Freyr and Ninian. Ninian is never going to get to sweep Corrin, since the neutralization of penalties means that she's not going to have a way to do that. And, well, while Freyr is pretty bulky and does have a defense tile to work with, Corrin's still going to manage to deal with him in a single hit. And this fight with Ninian is just a lot more one-sided. From here, since Edelgard moved over to the right to use Harsh Command, we can actually end up closing this match out this turn. Moving Ash forward lets us reposition Corrin, and have her break this healing tower from the right side. Then Peony can jump all the way over, dance her, and let her pick up our second Aether pot before closing this out in the enemy phase. This match was pretty similar to the last one. It's another double save setup using Igreen as a major threat, but this time using Katria to help her finish off her opponent after the AoE special gets them low. The Alchrist on their team is a rarely seen threat as well. His on-hit moonbows can really add up with triangle attack involved, especially with his weapon's penalty neutralization and flow desperation effects. Yune's panic and stat penalties help to mitigate the effects of the defense tiles, and make this a pretty dangerous setup to try and tank. On the other hand, after the last match, I wasn't too worried about Corrin's ability to survive this. So after we break this front line of structures, we just dance her forwards, and let her set up on the defense tile. I don't attack into Tiki here. A lot like the last match, I do want to make sure something stays alive, so we can reach these Aether pots afterwards. And we just get things started. Like before, the AoE special does do a chunk. Not as much, since she doesn't have Life and Death 4 to help boost it some more. But also, like the last time, she doesn't get to do any damage in combat. And Corrin just gets an extra powerful counterattack thanks to the stacked up negating Fang. Like Zanaki, Yune gets to do a little bit of chip damage with that third Sparrow, but doesn't get to do any damage with her actual attacks. This time thanks a lot to Peony's ability to neutralize penalties. Medeus moves in next, and that's not a good sign for the rest of their team. Alchrist ends up actually avoiding using a triangle attack here, which was a bit odd to see, but he wouldn't have actually gotten any damage done with it, even if he had used one. And then Tiki goes in, has a very impressive 6 damage times 2 with that triangle attack, which also gets mitigated to 0. And then Corrin gets to close things out with Celsius. Who probably doesn't appreciate seeing his Lightless Luna do 0 damage to anything. And with all their major threats out of the way, all that's left is to pick up the Aether Pots and close out the match.
Keep moving forward.
We can pull that off this turn. Moving Corrin back lets us set up all of her buffs again,
Like this.
and we can have Gatekeeper pick up the pot in the corner, Corrin pick up the pot in front, and let her enemy phase the Catray and close things out. This match was an excellent way to close out the week. It's a very intimidating Cataline setup, using Yunaka, Sanaki, and Kvasir as their primary threats. The combination of a maxed out Farsave Nagi, the line of traps and melee, and Medius' Kanto control do a great job of complicating any ranged and run or Gale Force approaches, while Camilla's donated Pierce effect makes Sanaki and Kvasir significantly more of a problem than they already are, especially with a sabotage penalty layered on top, and being a major threat in her own right. I had to spend some time thinking of the right approach to this, trying to make sure Corrin would intercept, survive, and knock out the major threats on the team without letting Minion dance anyone into the backline was a tricky positioning puzzle to solve. Thankfully, with some help from Soaring Guidance, and a reposition from Ash at the end here to make sure Milla doesn't sabotage Corrin in the enemy phase, we can keep all of our support in the safe corners and let Corrin do her thing. Kvasir ends up attacking first here, which I hadn't planned for. Her weapon's built-in panic means that she actually gets a priority on attacking as long as all of the attackers will get knocked out in their first combat. This also means that we get Penalty Doubler online before the combat with Yunaka and makes it a much less dangerous fight for Corrin. The 90% damage reduction Yunaka gets here is pretty impressive, but is less so when it's cut in half by Magic Mill follow-up. And it's all downhill from there. While Camilla can do a good chunk of start of combat damage, she doesn't outspeed Corrin or have triangle advantage, so it gets limited to 20% of Corrin's attack instead of 40%. And since she's not doing any damage with her actual attack, Corrin actually ends up out-healing that combat. Dinyan finally has an opening to go get dance Nagi, but Nagi isn't getting in range of us this turn. And, well, Nagi once again is able to do her start of combat damage and absolutely nothing else. With all their major threats out of the way, this turn should have been a little bit easier than it ended up being. But I do still need to be careful here. Ninian dancing this turn would let her refresh herself, and I'd rather avoid that because she would be able to knock out a lot of our support crew. So we just take advantage of penalty neutralization, and some movement shenanigans to let Corrin bait her out, and then we'll handle the other two in the next turn. Medius goes after Peony, Nagi chases Corrin, and they're very spread out for this last turn. We actually end up getting two close things out here. Gatekeeper can pick up the first Aether Pot for us, and after Ash opens up the crumbling wall, we can have Corrin attack Medius from that tile. And then have Peony jump all the way forwards, dance her, and Kanto to the top, which lets Corrin jump past her and pick up our second Aether Pot, before closing out the week by tanking a triangle disadvantage effective damage fight from this Nagi. It is a lot of fun to see her mitigate 61 damage from that hit. This was a really fun week of matches. It's great to see Corrin thriving with her new remix, and I'm looking forward to seeing her in action again in future Wind seasons. I do have a Discord channel if you'd like to hang out and chat. There's a link in the description, and I've also got a Patreon link there if you'd like to help support the channel. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.